be a long night. Ikaw na lang ang moderator.
Yes, sir.
Since you know the personalities who will talk here under expertise, ikaw may alam.
Yes, sir.
I'll give the baton to you to
Thank you, sir.
orchestrate tonight's discussion.
Okay, sir. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President. We have the panel of experts, and we can begin with Dr. Edsel Salvania to make his presentation with the clinical features of the Delta variant. We can, with your permission, sir, we would like to acknowledge Dr. Salvania to make his presentation. You have the floor, Dr. Salvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening to the Cabinet and members of the IATF. May I have the slides up, please? Okay, Mr. President, this is actually an update of what I presented to you before about itong nakakatakot po natin na Delta variant. We know more about it now, and what we are seeing is continuing to be scary. We call Delta the fastest and the fittest virus po na na-produce ng COVID-19. It is 60% more transmissible than Alpha, yung UK variant, which is already 60% more transmissible than the original virus. It is 3 times more contagious than the original SARS-CoV-2 virus. It also seems to be deadlier, and this will be worse if the healthcare system is overwhelmed. Patients also seem to get sicker, and younger ages can also develop severe disease po, Mr. President. Next slide, please. So ito po yung nakakatakot sa Delta kasi alam natin the original virus from Wuhan, it can infect about 2.4 to 2.6 people. Yung sa Europe 3, yung Alpha na UK variant, it can infect 4 to 5. Itong Delta up to 8 people po pwede niyang infect. And those 8 can each infect another 8. Kaya nakikita po natin yung sa India, yung nakikita natin sa Indonesia. Ang bilis-bilis po talaga ng spread. Exponential po talaga ang spread. Next slide, please. So, ang nakita po, there was an outbreak in China. And we know naman China has a very good healthcare system. Nagkaroon pa rin sila ng outbreak of about 168 people. Pero mukhang na-contain naman po nila. But what they found was yung Delta has 1,000 times more virus particles than the original virus. Kaya ang nakakahawa po talaga, there's also a longer duration of infectiousness. There is also a faster time from becoming infectious from the time you're exposed. Dati, it takes about 3 days bago ka nakakahawa ng mga tao. Ngayon, mga 30 hours lang pwede nang makahawa. And of course, there's a lot of virus. So even asymptomatic pa lang, nakakahawa na po. And yung sinasabi natin dati na close contact na at least 15 minutes, that is really out of, nakita po nila even in Australia and in China. Minsan 1-2 minutes lang pwede na pong mahawa. So this is a very contagious virus po. Next slide, please. So in summary po, we know Delta is more transmissible, it's potentially deadlier, and can spread quickly faster. But it is beatable with our minimum health standards. Face shield, face mask, physical distancing, and of course, we have to vaccinate everyone. We just really need to make sure na mag-level up rin po yung ating compliance because the virus has really leveled up. The treatment remains the same. Deaths are going down in countries with high vaccination rates. So tama po yung ginagawa natin. Continue to vaccinate. We were more cautious with relaxing our measures. Yung sa US, nagtanggal na sila ng mask. Even though mataas yung vaccination rate nila, that was the wrong thing to do. Lalo na with Delta kasi pwede pang mahawa. So I think at least in the short term, until we can vaccinate more and more people, we should continue to vaccinate as fast as possible, use our face masks and our face shields, and hopefully we can avoid a surge that is really devastating our ASEAN neighbors po. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Dr. Duque.
Thank you, sir. After Dr. Salvania, thank you, Dr. Salvania, for your presentation. Sir, if maybe allowed that we recognize Dr. Cynthia Saloma, the Executive Director of the Philippine Genome Center. You are recognized, Ma'am Saloma. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Good evening po, Mr. President and the members of the Cabinet. Can I have the first slide, please?
Welcome, ma'am.
So ngayon pong gabi, we are going to report to you our national genomic biosurveillance effort. If you remember, last December 26, you urged us to join the effort so that we can have a handle as to the number of the variants that are entering our countries. What is genome biosurveillance? I just would like to explain this po kasi maraming mga tao na akala nila point of care diagnostics yung genomic biosurveillance, no? So what is the purpose of our genomic biosurveillance effort? Number one is to track to how the virus is being, the presence in the country and how they are being transmitted in the community as well as po in our healthcare facilities. And of course, as part of our effort, we also detect outbreaks and we try to see what are the variants of concern that seems to be associated with these outbreaks. And of course, we identify the presence of new variants, both from our international incoming travelers, as well as, of course, we want to determine local transmission of these variants that come from our international travelers in cases where there are breaches in quarantine. And of course, we want to test whether the new variants change and how well our vaccines work. And of course, all these information will be very, very important to guide our response.
Sir, we will just have the third and last presentation before the cabinet members may want to ask, and Mr. President, they will be answering your questions, but perhaps it's best that we complete the presentation. One last presentation na lang po, maiksi lang po ito, kay Dr. Ana Ong Lim of the Technical Advisory Group. Mr. President, can we yield the floor to Dr. Ana Ong Lim?
Thank you, Secretary Duque, and good evening po, Mr. President, members of the Cabinet, and the rest of the IATF team. After listening to the presentations coming from Dr. Salvania and Dr. Saloma, I think the remaining question that we need to answer is what is the appropriate response now that the Delta variant has been detected within Philippine shores? So the first set of recommendations are actually focused on continued implementation of doors 1 and 2 of our 4-door strategy. So despite the data showing that there is already local transmission, border control continues to be a very critical component that we hope will continue to slow entry of more individuals who are positive not just for Delta, but also other variants of concern that may be discovered in the future. Now, after completing the 10-day facility quarantine, the LGUs are enjoined to continue enforcing their monitoring of the arrivals for the remaining 4 days of the standard 14-day quarantine. Pag nakauwi, hindi po ibig sabihin na pwede na pong gumala yung ating traveler kasi hindi pa po tapos yung 14 days. 10 araw pa lang po yung inilagay nila sa facility. Also, it's very important for the LGUs to implement strict lockdowns in cities or provinces as necessary. Given the economic impact of imposing region-wide lockdowns, the response strategies anchored on imposing localized or granular lockdowns. And this will happen at the household or barangay levels. And with implemented targeted response strategies, we hope to be able to reduce transmission, at the same time also reduce the economic strain of actually implementing these lockdowns. Next slide, please. The second set of recommendations focuses on surveillance and improving our healthcare capacity. So our strategy to manage a possible surge is to ensure that the healthcare system is actually ready regardless of the community quarantine classification. Hindi po yung mag-escalate po tayo at saka palang naghahabol. Dapat parating ready ang ating healthcare capacity. There should be sufficient TTMF and ICU bed capacity. And as per IATF Resolution 104, we're calling on the hospitals to increase their COVID-19 bed capacity to 30% for the private hospitals and 50% for the public hospitals to ensure that should a surge happen, we will have enough beds available. So to summarize, my key messages po, Mr. President, are disease surveillance enhanced through whole genome sequencing will ensure that we will be able to detect our signals immediately and be able to keep one step ahead. Second, with the confirmation of the local transmission of the Delta variant, we need to work on the premise that every case that's now detected is Delta so that we can act accordingly. Next, each component of the four-door strategy should already or is already in place and can still be intensified by continuing to implement our strict border control, not only at all airports, but also at seaports. We've seen that our initial detections actually happened among seafarers. We need to shorten case and close contact detection and immediately implement isolation and quarantine for these individuals. We need to fast-track vaccination and focus particularly on A2 and A3. And as a last line of defense, we need to equip our hospitals by providing them with health human resources, with the appropriate equipment, with oxygen supply, and we will be able to maintain their capacity if we triage appropriately by providing enough TTMF facilities. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Doktora.